Iron Man has been a silent menace in ranked due to his incredible damage output and capability of canceling key ultimates with his own. My name is Paz, an Eternity player on the competitive ladder, and I am going to tell you all of the things you need to know in order to pop off and carry as Iron Man. Starting things off, Iron Man in the current meta doesn't really function like other DPS. Since his ultimate charges so fast, oftentimes, if there is not an opportunity for you to single out a target with your beam, it is better to focus on charging your ult with your other primary fire as fast as possible. Charging your ultimate gives you a lot of opportunities to heavily influence a fight. You can take out supports, force out Magneto's ultimate, and force the enemies to play in specific ways. So if there is a group of enemies far away from you, blast them with your primary, and then when you get in range, swap into your Overdrive form and take targets down with your Unibeam. Iron Man takes patience and high precision plays with your ultimate to really find a lot of value. With this in mind, let's start discussing his kit. Starting off with his primary fire, his Repulsor blasters, Iron Man fires a projectile in a straight line that explodes upon impact. Because they are projectiles that you are firing, make sure that you are leading your shots a bit to account for the time they are flying through the air. The blasters fire in a 3-shot combo sequence that change the properties of each blast you fire. The first 2 blasts consume 10 ammo and deal 95 damage after the recent 5% team up anchor damage bonus. The final blast combines both hands, consuming 16 ammo and dealing 105 damage after the recent nerfs and anchor damage bonus. It also fires the projectile faster than normal, so you'll have to adjust your aim mid-combo. If you hit the full projectile combo on a target, you will deal 295 damage, enough to eliminate a Luna Snow with some change. There are some pretty important things to note about this ability though. Since a little less than half of your damage is tied to the splash damage of each shot, the likelihood you are actually going to 3-shot squishies is pretty low. The projectiles explode in a 3-meter radius around where they impact. The further the target is away from the impact, the less damage they will take, capping out at dealing only 60% of the normal splash damage, or a minimum of 22 damage per shot. That is a significant decrease from the 95 damage we were discussing earlier. So it is important that you are aiming at the target's feet when you are engaging them in a duel. This way, even if you don't hit them directly, you are at least dealing some damage. It is still important that you try to hit them with the projectile directly, as that's where most of the damage comes from. On top of this, because of the way the damage functions, the Repulsor blasters are used more for pressuring enemies that are heavily stacked together in order to charge your ultimate rather than strictly for damaging purposes. The Unibeam will be your main single target damage that we're going to discuss soon. Times you'll definitely want to be looking to use your blasters is if the enemies are in a support ultimate, like Luna Snows for example. This is so that you can charge your ultimate in a situation where you don't have it yet to then instantly take out the entire enemy team at the click of a button. If you are too far away to beam a target down, you can try to fish for some damage with the blasters, but the beam is definitely better if you're trying to really focus a specific target. So let's talk about that ability now. Iron Man's alternate fire is the Unibeam. Upon holding right click by default, Iron Man will channel the hit scan beam at targets, dealing 147 damage per second normally. This means 2 seconds is enough to eliminate most squishy targets. The beam can be fired for 10 seconds before you have to reload, since it consumes 10 ammo per second. It is important to note that your ammo is shared between your blasters we were just talking about and the beam. Using this knowledge, if you want to try and take down a squishy target but need to fly to them, make sure you reload before you go for your play. This is because you need at least 20 ammo for 2 seconds of the beam if you intend to take them down from full health. My rule of thumb is that you should give yourself some room and try to have around 30 to 40 ammo if you want the beam to target someone down, so that you're allowing yourself to miss some of the beam without having to reload in front of their faces. This also is the same concept for maybe if that target gets healing. Another attribute to understand is that this beam has 25 meters of range, which honestly is pretty crazy. Emma Frost's beam is getting buffed to 18 meters, so you still have a fair amount of wiggle room to deal damage without getting contested by her. Before we move on to other abilities though, we need to talk about target prioritization on the beam. If you tried to beam tanks down, but they have 2 healers behind them, you are going to struggle quite a bit to take them down unless you have the help from your team. On top of this, you are going to be giving the enemy supports a lot of ultimate charge. This doesn't matter if they already have their ultimates and you're using the beam to just generate your own, but it's really important that you think about this. You have to weigh your options here. If a bunch of enemies are stacked, let's say at least 3, you can hit one in the center with your blasters. You will deal ideally 170 damage per shot to the group in a much safer position that way. This is important because it actually means you're going to charge your ultimate faster if the enemies are stacked with your left click compared to your right click. A lot of Iron Man is about poking with your blasters until you find an opportunity to finish a target off with your right click immediately afterwards. Knowing this will make your life on Iron Man a bunch easier. As I'm sure many of you were waiting for it, let's talk about that ability that powers up all of Iron Man's attacks, Armor Overdrive. Upon pressing E by default, Iron Man begins a short animation that, once complete, will power up all of his attacks by a considerable margin on top of giving him 50 bonus health after the nerfs coming this Friday. The Overdrive lasts 10 seconds, where it will then do another animation. Note that it does not perform a reload for you, but it does give you infinite ammo for that 10 seconds. So if you need to reload and pop into Overdrive, make sure you are at least at a safe space to reload after its 10-second duration. All right, but let's talk about how this ability buffs your damage. For the blasters, the impact damage is left unchanged. However, the explosion deals 15 more damage. This means that each projectile deals 110 damage. This does not change any meaningful breakpoints, but what it does mean is more sustained damage to groups on top of more consistent picks if you have to finish targets off. The larger change for your blasters is that each projectile, while in Overdrive, moves faster, more precisely at the same speed as the final shot in your normal combo. So even easier to hit shots from range in this form. Most of the time, you're gonna wanna use the Overdrive though, so that you can use your Unibeam, and the buff is pretty crazy for this ability. While in Overdrive, Unibeam deals 200 damage per second after the Ultron Anchor buffs. That is a considerable step up from the 147 damage per second without Overdrive active. This drastically reduces your time to kill on squishy targets and makes it feasible to pressure tanks that are out of the line of sight of their supports. Compared to the Gamma team up that is now out of the game, you are doing 20 damage per second less. But keep in mind that now you can give Ultron his crazy ability and you don't need a Hulk to do solid damage anymore. In a way, this makes Iron Man an even more consistent pick in my opinion. Finally, while in Overdrive form, the Micro Missile Barrage does more damage than normal, but we will cover that ability when we get there. Because you get thrown into an animation before you can utilize your upgraded abilities, it is very, very important that you use this ability from behind cover like a corner of a wall so that you don't get caught out. You'll definitely want to do this against characters like Spider-Man who are always going to contest you on Iron Man. Go behind a wall, get your overhealth and damage buff, and then swing the corner when you're able to shoot. The other thing you'll want to think about is whether or not you are going to be able to actually pressure a target for an elimination from safety at the very least. If a Hawkeye is just going to dome you out of beam, it is much better to try to force him out further away from his team before you go in for a beam damage kill. Outside of specific situations, it is very important that you are constantly thinking about how you can set yourself up for a big surge of value with the Armor Overdrive. The way you are going to set yourself up is through Iron Man's flight hypervelocity. Upon pressing shift by default, Iron Man will begin flying forward extremely quickly until his energy depletes or you press the ability again. You have a total of 120 energy to work with, and flying costs 15 energy per second. So you can fly for 8 seconds before you run out of energy. On top of this, when you are not using hypervelocity, Iron Man recovers 10 energy per second. So it takes 12 seconds to fully recharge your fuel. Rarely will this ever happen though, since when you use Armor Overdrive, you will be granted infinite flight and fully recharge your energy upon leaving the ability. Considering this is on a 20-second cooldown, you are probably never going to run out of energy with Iron Man. In terms of how you should use this flight, it is best utilized when you are quickly trying to get to a place to shift into your Overdrive form, or if you are trying to get away from specific forms of damage. For example, if you see a Luna Snow in the back of the fight that is a little split from her team, you can path to an angle nearby to shift into your Overdrive form and then take her out quickly. But let's take this a step further. Let's say that there is a Hela that is set up and immediately pressures you afterwards. Then you can use the flight to get behind your team and get some healing. You should also use your flight to place yourself for using your ultimate in a safe space that gives you enough visibility to lock in and find a key pick. We'll talk about this a little bit more later. Outside of the intricate mechanics of this ability, just know that this ability is extremely loud. It is easily the loudest ability in the game. It's louder than the fans on a dusty old PS4. That's how bad it is. So if you want to flank, well, honestly, just don't, but if you have to, don't use your flight to get there. Closing out the basic abilities Iron Man has, we have his micro missile barrage. Whether Iron Man is flying around with hypervelocity or armor overdrive, he can choose to launch out micro missiles at the click of a button. Note that he can only do it when these abilities are active. If he's just chilling and shooting, he can't really use them. But if you use them when flying and then switch into armor overdrive, you'll get another set of missiles immediately off of cooldown. While flying, Iron Man sends 16 missiles directly below him, dealing 336 damage in total. Not gonna lie, this ability is impossible to aim this way and really isn't worth your mental headache trying to aim it because you're really never even gonna hit the shots anyways. While on overdrive form, he sends 18 missiles right where the crosshair is pointed, dealing 284 damage in total. This time, the missiles actually work. The closer you are to the ground, the tighter the spread is and the more consistent your damage will be. In both of these situations, rarely are you ever going to be able to actually one-shot enemies, and most of the time, it is just used as supplemental damage when running away, when you initially swing a corner, or right before you switch back into your overdrive form. To be honest, this ability is kind of just sad and seems like they put it in for an extra button. I rarely use it, and sometimes it just takes away from your beam up time that is more important anyway. It does help you farm ult faster in some situations, but it is very difficult to use in literally any other case. All right, but let's talk about Iron Man's ultimate, the Invincible Pulse Cannon. Upon casting the ultimate, Iron Man will go into a brief animation and then fire a slow-moving projectile that explodes on impact, decimating any enemy that finds themselves in its wake. The impact has a radius of 10 meters and deals 1,000 damage to anyone inside. That's enough to one-shot pretty much everything in the game. Because of this, understand that you are not safe when you go for this ultimate, and the enemy team will always attempt to shoot you down when you go for your big play. There are a couple of ways around this though. You can ask for a shield from your tank like Emma Frost for example, or you can just ask Magneto for a bubble to ensure you don't get taken out. You can also force out specific enemies before you go for an ult. For example, you could pressure Hela to force her to bird back to her team and then ult while she's in that animation. What you definitely do not want to do is use your flight to flank behind the enemy and immediately look for an ultimate. This makes it very obvious that you are about to ult, and the enemies will likely take you out every single time if they have headphones on. If you need to set your ultimate up on a flank, get placed and then wait a couple of seconds in the shadows so that they forget where you are, and then what you can do is you watch for your enemies to look around and then simply hover over to your position and look for an ultimate when they look away. Outside of how you should set yourself up to ult, when should you actually ult? First off, Iron Man has one of the fastest charging ultimates in the game, clocking in at only 2,800 charge. This means you have to do a little less than 2,800 damage to actually charge the ultimate. So in theory, you could just use this ultimate off cooldown. However, you also want to make sure you are using the ultimate to cancel other impactful ults the enemies are planning to throw at you. For example, enemy support ultimates every single time. If you can eliminate a Luna Snow every time she ults, you are going to carry games even if that is the only thing you can do. Just make sure you aren't too far away or else you're going to have a really difficult time destroying them because they're just going to have the time to run away. You could also look to take out impactful DPS ultimates like Magic or even Punisher if you time it just right. Just make sure that you don't forget to place yourself in a safe place so you can actually get the ultimate off before getting taken out. Something most players don't actually know about the ult is that the projectile itself, before it hits the ground, actually has a damage field around it that deals 300 damage per second. I don't know when this will ever be useful for you, but hey, it's pretty cool, and now you know. All right, now that we have discussed all of Iron Man's abilities, let's start talking about what counters him. Iron Man really struggles into anyone that can shoot him out of the sky, obviously. To name a few, we got Hela, Hawkeye, Star-Lord, Spider-Man, Psylocke, and even Adam Warlock, Luna Snow, and Mantis. This isn't to say it is impossible to play into these characters, just that they will significantly hinder where you can play based on who you are against. Against characters like Hela, Hawkeye, and Adam Warlock, you will want to make sure that you play closer to cover and on the ground in general to deny the enemy from taking you out early. You will always be at a disadvantage, but this will give you a chance to get them low before taking them out with your Unibeam. Against characters like Star-Lord and Psylocke, you just have to bait them to thirst too hard to eliminate you so that they're out of position, making them an easy target for you and your team. When it comes to Spider-Man, good luck. Hopefully your healers aren't trash, but I fear they aren't looking up often. Maybe Ultron can make this a little easier if he gets a little bit more buffs, but I'm not too sure until I see it. Outside of immediate threats to your life on Iron Man, you also have Magneto that can completely suck up your ultimate if you are not careful. This is pretty common in fights where teams are trading support ultimates, but you can get away with this if you manage to force out the enemy support ultimates first before the enemies force out yours. And honestly, if you can force out a Magneto ultimate, you charge your ultimate faster anyways, so I don't think it's the end of the world. Moving on to characters Iron Man likes to play with, it is important to note the team up that he lost and the team up that he gained. Once season 2.5 comes out, which is this Friday, the Gamma team up is no more, so the Hulk team up is not important to think about anymore. Before, whenever you played Iron Man, you better have a Hulk. Now, that's just not the case. Instead, whenever you have an Ultron, he gains access to a beam that can both heal teammates and deal damage to enemies. It makes Ultron a menace, and you definitely want to run Iron Man if you have an Ultron to make him a lot more viable. Outside of these, Iron Man loves playing alongside any tank that is able to keep him alive when he ults, at least in ranked. This is the easiest way to get value with Iron Man, and if you can make sure it hits in a ranked game, you're gonna win all the time. In terms of DPS, Iron Man likes playing with any character that can contest enemies that are going to be able to pressure him easily. Hela and Psylocke come to mind. Hela can duel her counterpart on the other team while they are occupied with the Iron Man that's flying around in the sky, while also having a very favorable matchup against both Star-Lord and Spider-Man. Psylocke has a very easy time dealing with Hela and Hawkeye with her invisibility and can get a one-shot off on Star-Lord if he isn't focused on marking her. She does struggle with eliminating Spider-Man though, so if that's a problem, it's probably not a good idea to be running Iron Man. Finally, as far as supports go, Iron Man can really go with anyone. Ultron seems promising for flyers like Iron Man, but so long as the player knows that Iron Man is going to be flying through the air, you can just heal him. It's not that hard. Invisible Woman is a weird one for me, but the shield is nice to set up your ultimate, which is enough for me to still think she's pretty solid with Iron Man. Before we move on to the VOD portion of this guide, when should you play Iron Man? Are there any strong characters he shuts down? The best time to play Iron Man is when the enemies are running characters that cannot stop you from just chilling in the air. Characters that come to mind are definitely against a group matchup. Iron Man does so well into that. Emma Frost, Squirrel Girl, Moon Knight Magic, Black Panther, you get the idea. In these cases, Iron Man just gets to do whatever he wants with no repercussions. I also don't mind playing Iron Man into a Johnny since he should be able to pressure him often enough to stop him from diving your entire team. It is a bit unfortunate that the characters that Iron Man struggles into are pretty popular and ranked though, but regardless, it is not impossible to lock in and carry games on the character. Now that we understand Iron Man and his kit, as well as where he is applicable, let's take a look at a couple of VODs to get an even better understanding of his kit. All right, so today the person that we're going to be VODing for Iron Man is none other than the GOAT of Iron Man, Rymazing himself. Thanks to him, I reached out to him. He sent me one of his ranked games where he went absolutely crazy. And honestly, if you're an Iron Man player and you don't know Rymazing, go check out his links in the description. This guy is, when I think of Iron Man, I think Rymazing. So I want to get right into the VOD here and tell you guys some of the stuff that he's doing, especially against the Groot matchup, where this is going to happen a lot in ranked where your group just isn't doing as well. I don't know how well his group was doing because I wasn't really looking at his group, but there will be times where you need to pick Iron Man because you don't have a rocket and you just need to make something work. Now, I want to show you guys immediately when he goes in Overdrive, he's going to force out the Star-Lord, but then look at all the destruction he's doing it so that it's easier for him to find angles and it's just safer for him. And then the other thing I want to show is this entire 10 seconds, let's rewind this back just a little bit. He never actually takes his finger off of the Unibeam. He just uses it the whole time because there's really like no reason to not be shooting. There's always someone that can be in his immediate vicinity. He's playing around cover really well, and he's just pumping so much damage to the point of he's going to have his ultimate here within the first minute of the game, within the first fight alone. So he's going to be able to fly in here, and he's at least going to be able to look for a play here. Then Magneto's obviously going to suck up his ultimate with his own friendly Magneto bubbling him, but like this is exactly what you need to be doing. He's not doing too much. All he's trying to do is keep his uptime as high as humanly possible on the Iron Man so that he can farm his ult super fast. So in this VOD, I wanted to highlight to you guys just how important being behind a wall is to pop your overdrive to then take your 1v1. Again, there's nothing super crazy that like is going on. I mean, his aim is absolutely amazing. There's no denying that. But watch how he pops his armor overdrive behind this wall and then immediately takes out this Iron Man. He didn't even lose his overhealth strictly because of his positioning and then using that ability behind a wall. I just wanted to show you guys how impactful that is. The second thing I wanted to highlight in this clip is watch how he never feels the need to get in there and get super close. He's always at that perfect 20 to 25 meters away from his enemies because it's so much easier to just track when you have a little bit of a distance so you can actually predict where your targets are going. That's something that in the gameplay that I had in the guide today when I was playing Iron Man, that was my POV, I wasn't doing. And now after watching this, I can kind of see where I was messing up and why it felt kind of harder to take some of these duels. So positional wise and just using his ability wise, this is the model that you want to be having when you're playing Iron Man. All right, and for our final VOD, I want you guys to specifically study how Rymazing is using his ultimates. Now, he's not going to hit a lot of these ultimates because he's playing in top 500 elo where both sides, like, they know what's about to happen with this ult and they're going to respond to it. But at the same time, he's using it in a situation where right here, we have a Groot ult goes through, a Luna ult goes through. Unfortunately, the Luna didn't get pulled into that Groot ult. If she did, he actually might be able to find someone there. But I want to show you guys, look how what he immediately does. He wastes no time. He's immediately right-clicking, and he already has 45% to his ultimate. I think he actually probably gets this in less than a minute. But right now, he's just going to power up. He's going to keep trying to farm ult charge as fast as possible, and we're going to get there. He almost has his ult already, which is kind of crazy. He literally used it once this fight and is about to have it a second time. So then the moment he gets it, he wastes no time at all. He's immediately launching that out. Honestly, he probably could have set it up a little bit stronger there or maybe aimed it a little better, but still, the idea is there that we were talking about with this ultimate in the guide earlier. How fast that dude just got his ultimate. He got it 2 times, and if this fight goes on for another 30 seconds, it's not because he's just putting so much pressure on and it's going to be over by the time that happens. But if it did last that long, he is already 40% to another ultimate. This guy almost got 3 ults in one fight. This is the type of stuff that you need to be doing on Iron Man, and I promise you, in lower elos, for people that are just learning this character, every single one of those ultimates that we just saw him fire probably is getting impact in your games. In these games, it's still getting impact. It's just not impact on the kill feed. It's impact in forcing Loki's runes, mag bubbles, Groot walls, all of those things that eventually lead to a fight win. And this elo, for your elo, that's 3 picks on the kill feed. And now you don't need to waste any more ults for the rest of your team. So if you can do all these things that Rymazing is doing in each and every one of the VODs that we were looking at today, living longer, making sure that you're fighting in an advantageous position and ulting almost off cooldown, I promise you, you are going to make Iron Man look like a menace when Hela and Psylocke are banned and Groot is in the picture. So I hope you guys enjoyed these VOD portions, and let's close out the video. And that closes out today's guide for Iron Man and Marvel Rivals. If you have any questions, make sure to send them in the comments down below, as well as asking me live right now here on YouTube or on Twitch at twitch.tv/PazSwagger. I try to stream every day I upload, so be sure to check me out to learn more about everything I talked about today. Thank you guys all so much for watching, but until next time, I've got to peace out and Paz out. I'll see you in the next one.